Well, I think we need to move the conversation sort of back to farmers on the ground and kind of away from these conversations about big corporations. I mean, a farmer on the ground uses glyphosate as part of his everyday practice, I would say, when it comes to harvesting and preparing seed beds. I mean, what's important for him is it ensures the quality of the yield and it ensures that he's able to produce a crop at a certain cost, which is what the market demands. Now, of course, he's able to do this because he's trained, he's certified, and so are the people that sell him the glyphosate as well. And I think that's important to just point out is there's already regulation on these products, and there is no real way that it can end up into the diet of people. So I'd just like to say that from a farmer's point of view, yes, it's important in ensuring quality and cost effectiveness of growth.
Is it carcinogenic in your view? I mean, you're talking about certification to be able to use it.
Again, you need to look at. This is true. So under the Sustainable Use Directive of pesticides, farmers must be certified for professional use of glyphosate, and also they receive training on how to use sprayers and such things like that. Now, in terms of being carcinogenic, I think you have to look at these reports. So as was correctly highlighted out, there's conflicting evidence. Now, as an association, we push a risk-based approach to the use of pesticides. So we don't look at hazard, we look at risk. So in this case, the initial WHO or IARC report said that the glyphosate was probably carcinogenic based on a hazard assessment. Now, if you look at other things that it's classed as probably carcinogenic, you get things such as working night shifts or sitting in front of a log fire. Now, of course, those things, naturally, there's a hazard in those things, but of course, we take the risk to use them. And the same is true with products that contain glyphosate. We look at how the risk can be managed, i.e., as I mentioned, through training, correct usage, and mitigation measures, and we decide that in order to ensure safe, affordable food for populations, the risk can be managed and obviously can be taken.
The risk can be managed and taken, but Tom Keene, there's the argument over the science, and there's the argument also over the commercialization of it. I've spoken to farmers who grow GM-free crops and the like, and they claim that the big agrochemical groups really peddle these pesticides and herbicides, and they not only are they putting stuff that could be carcinogenic, but they're putting too much of it in the fields.
Well, again, I think if you look at glyphosate itself, it doesn't have a patent. So in which case it's actually open for anyone to produce. So yes, obviously Monsanto are a large producer of it, but they are not the exclusive producer of it. And when you talk about the use of it, overuse, again, in Europe, I would say that these things are regulated and there are maximum residue levels to ensure that these things don't end up in people's diets. Again, the same is true in water. And when you talk to water companies, glyphosate as a substance is actually quite simple to remove from the water systems. So again, the alternatives might not actually be as easy to remove. So I think you have to look at some of the adverse effects here.
Tom Keene, a recent poll conducted by YouGov across 5 of the biggest EU states found that 2/3 of Europeans support the ban on glyphosate. Should we be taking into consideration the views of the general population?
I absolutely agree. I mean, the farmers do not want to put humans and the environment at risk to help. However, I think I would say that those people perhaps need probably information, and that is our role as associations to provide that information. And I think there is certainly an onus on us to be given the chance to explain why these things are used and what are the trade-offs involved. Now, as I said, I think the trade-offs here are very little. I think use of glyphosate or glyphosate-containing products is actually provides very well for Europe. And so in this case, I think that we need to talk to these people and we need to maybe just bust some of the myths around glyphosate. I think one of the things I'd just like to mention at this point is people talk about threat to the environment. Well, glyphosate is very important in minimum and zero tillage practices, meaning that you plough the ground less, i.e. you preserve the soil, you don't use as much fuel, and therefore you sort of reduce carbon emissions. And the same is true when you use it pre-harvest. Again, this is one of the things that's been picked on. But again, look at the unintended adverse effects of that. The reason it is used, particularly in Northern Europe member states, is because the crop is wet. Now, glyphosate can help dry that off. And if you aren't doing that, you of course have a less consistent harvest, and you end up drying the crop more afterwards.
But
which,
Tom
again,
Keene,
would result
is it
in more
really the
fuel
only game in
electricity.
town? It's
So
the only herbicide possible to use that's effective? It really is?
There are no like-for-like alternatives immediately available.
If there's still no decision at the end of the month, there's the possibility that the European Commission could adopt its own proposal of an extension and force through the approval despite the controversy. Would you want to see that happen?
I think we would want to see scientific risk-based assessment followed. And I think that is what the Commission would do, and we would call on them to do that. When you look at the European Food Safety, EFSA, the authority that's in charge of risk assessment of pesticides in the EU, they have judged that glyphosate does not pose a carcinogenic risk.
So you'd prefer that the Commission pushes it through?
As has the WHO's follow-up reports. I wouldn't say the Commission are pushing it through. I think that's wrong to say. I think you're trying to put words in people's mouths there. I think what they are doing is they are following the regulatory process which the Council and the elected European Parliament, as well as the Commission, all agreed to. And that is what they would be doing.